Okay, I have been informed we are on week 10. I believe that to be true. And again, this is one of the hardest weeks to understand exactly what Jesus is getting at because in our culture, there is a lot of conversation around the end times, and eschatology is what we call it in theology school. And when is Jesus coming back? And how will we know? And all of us have read news headlines that claim to know the answers to all these things and how to break down the signs and how to know that Jesus is coming and it's in our generation. And I want you tonight to try as best as possible to set all of that aside because what I want to try and do is figure out if we can understand Jesus just by what he's saying in this text and how that relates and plays with the Old Testament without importing all of our Western end of times stuff that may actually end up being a distraction. There's a lot of debate around the passages that we're going to read, a lot of really good scholarship that disagrees with each other. I don't even know if I can tell you exactly where I stand on how this breaks down and what Jesus is talking about, but I'm going to do my best to give you a couple of little clues and rabbit trail pieces that have started to bring this more into focus for me. But before we dive into the text, let's just check our roadmap for where we are in Matthew's gospel because I think that helps keep us grounded in the text. Look how far we've come. We are in this final phase of Matthew's gospel, the clash of kingdoms. We've seen Jesus come into Jerusalem for the final time. He is being pretty combative with all of the religious leaders, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and he is in this final block of teaching primarily with his disciples. He's going to critique the Pharisees, leave the city. He's going to have his last public teaching moment, and then he's going to spend time just with his disciples. And by the end of this week, we'll only have maybe one paragraph left before we are in the conclusion of Matthew's gospel. Um, the next few weeks will be heavy. I mean, we're in the end of Jesus's story, and all of us understand what the end of Jesus's story entails. So, especially as we get into the events of Holy Week, I'm going to try and dial back some of the teaching because really we just need to experience the events of Holy Week. I encourage you to find a way to do that for you, not just to read the story, but to find a way to experience the story. If that's watching The Chosen, watch The Chosen. If that's doing the Stations of the Star, which by the way, you can do online or in person, Stations of the Star, that's Christmas, Stations of the Cross. Do that, but find some way to get into the story in a way that triggers your imagination and your senses. You don't want to get to Easter Sunday morning and not be able to celebrate the true joy of the resurrection because we didn't prepare along the way. So these next few weeks are just one more way that I hope you're preparing for the reality that we get to celebrate on Easter. And then one last word of just reminder, the story, we're kind of ahead of Holy Week at this point in our reading of Matthew, but we're going to slow way down over the next 2 weeks so that by the time we get to Holy Week, Good Friday, even Maundy, Thursday, and Easter Sunday, the text that we're reading will be back in line with the actual events of Holy Week. Does that make sense? We will read about Jesus' death on actual Good Friday. So I hope that that is an encouragement to you and also a help as you prepare your heart for Easter. So again, we're here in this final section of Matthew's Gospel, and we're starting in chapter 23 tonight with the seven woes to the scribes and the Pharisees. Now, I'm tempted to think of woes as like a finger wag. He's so mad at them, and he is. But a lot of woe is less anger and more just deep sadness that comes out in this overpouring of emotion. Jesus is, he wanted so much for the scribes and the Pharisees to embrace him, to embrace the movement. And I think he is deeply saddened both by how they're treating the people and by the fact that they're rejecting the good things that he has come to bring. So Jesus is within the temple crowds. He's speaking to the crowds, not just his disciples here at the start of 23. So this is a public address. It's his last public address. And he begins this way. The scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses's seat. Now, when you think of Moses's seat, this is an actual thing. In every synagogue, there would be a seat that looks somewhat like this, and it's called the seat of Moses. And this is where the Pharisees or whoever was leading in the synagogue would take the scroll that they're going to teach on that day and sit and teach from Moses' seat. Why would they do that? What is Moses associated with?
The law.
The law. So it gives them a level of authority, right? To teach from Moses. They're teaching from the books of Moses about what it means to live as God's people. So is it a good thing to sit on Moses' seat? Yeah, it is. It's a sign of authority. This is why Jesus is going to say, do whatever they tell you. Because what are they telling you when they're sitting on Moses' seat? They're telling you about the law, about what Moses taught. Those are all positive things. But Jesus is going to go on and on in this chapter about the bad things that they're doing. And what are the bad things that they're doing? He says, do what you hear them say, but not what?
They do.
What they do. I mean, come on. Like, is this a lesson that we sometimes need to hear?
Of
I
course.
think about this every time I preach, every time I teach. Do what they say, but not what they do. Because they preach really good, but they don't practice. And Jesus is going to unpack that over the next couple of chapters. Here's the first one. They tie up heavy burdens that are really hard to bear and lay them on people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to move them with their finger. Okay? They do all their deeds to be seen by others, for they make their phylacteries broad and their fringes long. By phylacteries, you're talking about this little box that Orthodox Jews still today wear on their heads or on their arms. And does anyone know what's in this box?
The law.
The law.
Specifically,
and
what
Shema.
piece of
verses,
the
yeah.
law?
The Shema, the
The
Shema.
Shema.
Shema
Shema.
prayer. And
Yeah.
what is the Shema prayer all about?
Loving God with all your heart, soul, and strength.
Yeah, so by wearing these boxes on their head and on their arms, it's reminding them as they pray that that's how they ought to pray and how they ought to live. So by making their phylacteries broad, there's more room for what? The law, more room for scripture. So they're saying again, they're showing that they're following the law. And again, their fringes are really long, aka the tassels on their garments that they wear are really long. They look good. They look like they're doing all the right kinds of things. They love to be at the place of honor. They get the best seats in the synagogues, greetings in the marketplace. They're called rabbi, which for small towns in Jesus' day in Israel is their little celebrities, right? I mean, this is like the teachers of the teachers. These are the ones up in the pulpits and on Sunday mornings who are doing all of the teaching. They look so good. But the moment you get beneath the surface, Jesus says you kind of see what is true in reality. They love to be seen, they love to be honored. And Jesus says, this is not how it's going to be with you. You are not to be called rabbi. Think of this as you're not to be a celebrity in your little town. You have one teacher, and who's that teacher? Jesus.
God.
I'm not pointing
Jesus.
at me, by the way. Jesus. Jesus is saying you have one teacher. Call no man father, for you have one father in heaven. Don't be called teacher. You have one teacher, the Christ. And here's the kicker. Jesus says, you're not going to be the one honored at every feast. You're not going to be the one who's, above everyone and thought of as the greatest in the land. He says, the greatest among you is your servant. And whoever exalts himself, aka like these Pharisees, they're going to be humbled. The pride will come crashing down, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. This is exactly what Jesus is teaching on all throughout Matthew. This is what I preached on Sunday. Whoever is first in their own minds, they've missed the kingdom. But those who are willing to humble themselves and make themselves last by serving other people, they're the ones who are going to be exalted. And again, who do we ultimately see model this? It's like the Sunday school answer.
Jesus.
Jesus. He is the one who's going to show all of this to be true. Now he's going to get into these woes. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites. For you shut the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. Now, real quick, someone tell me what we think of when we hear the word hypocrites.
They say one thing and do another.
Do another.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Absolutely. In our day, that's what a hypocrite is. In Jesus's day, there was another layer to this. It's not necessarily, but think of it this way. Marty talks about this a lot. In fact, a lot of what I'm going to talk about tonight is straight from Marty Solomon and his podcast, which I'm going to put in the chat before this is over. Someone remind me. Marty talks about how the Pharisees and the scribes, do they do exactly what they say?
No.
Oh,
In a lot of ways, they do. They're practicing the law. They're keeping the halakha. They're doing everything they actually say they want to do. The problem, as we'll see here in a little bit, actually, let's just scroll down and look at it. The problem is not that they're not doing what they say. The problem is they're focused on all the wrong things. Look here. You tithe mint and dill and cumin, which is part of the law. Like you're so good at keeping that piece of the law, but you've neglected the weightier matters. What does he mean by that?
Justice,
mercy, and faithfulness. So, do the Pharisees do what they say they're going to do? Absolutely, they do. They've just missed the whole point. And the hypocritical thing that they're doing in Jesus's day is not about what they're doing, it's about how they're doing it. Jesus says they're essentially acting like actors. They are doing everything with the motivation to be seen. Feasts of honors in, long phylactery or broad phylacteries, long time. They want to be seen doing the right thing. So when Jesus calls them a hypocrite, think of it as him calling them actors. It's like they're putting on a show. They're putting on like a whole production. And the whole point of the production is, look at us, how righteous we are. And Jesus says, in doing that, you have completely missed the whole point of the law, which is that you are supposed to be a blessing to everyone around you. You're supposed to be the ones who live out justice and righteousness. And that's the piece that they're missing. Does this make sense?
Yes.
A little bit of a different view here. Because again, they are doing what they say. They're just doing all the wrong things. Jesus calls them blind guides. He talks about this loophole that they're getting into in terms of offerings, how they've missed the whole point, which is justice and mercy. This is what Jesus is really mad about. He's mad not that they're keeping the halakha. I mean, he probably kept a lot of the halakha and the law itself. What he's mad about is they are totally missing the boat on the most important part of the law. Love your neighbors. Love being justice and mercy and faithfulness. So he says, again, for you clean the outside of the cup and the plate. In other words, you keep the measure of the law, like the idea of it. But what you've missed is the inside portion of it. It's all about their motivation. On the outside, they look good, but the moment you get beneath the surface, you see the rot inside. You're like whitewashed tombs, beautiful on the outside, but inside you're full of dead bones and uncleanliness. Does this make sense? Like Jesus is really going after their motivation. And I mean, come on, y'all. Can we relate to this? Are there times when we put on a front or show or pretend like our lives are one way when inside they're not exactly like that? That's the hypocritical thing. And I think we have to wrestle with that a little bit, where if we are praying at times to seem righteous or going on, or if the way that we serve other people is not actually about serving other people, but making sure that we look good and our resumes are however this means, we have to wrestle with what Jesus would say to us in those matters. Because I think he would have similar words for us. It's all about motivation.
It's about the optics.
Say it again, Stan?
It's the optics.
Yes.
It's what shows, and that's what it's all about.
Would we call that shallow? Would we call that shallow?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you could. I think it goes beyond being shallow, but
I think so. I agree.
I think
More
it's a
than
piece of it.
shallow.
Again, it comes down to, okay, we'll use me as an example. If the only reason I get up and preach on a Sunday morning is so that you guys will like me and think I'm really smart and have good things to say, I'm being hypocritical. I'm putting on a show. Does this make sense?
Mhm.
If I only teach because I want large numbers to think I'm holy and holy, then that's putting on a show. It comes down to the motivate. Why do you serve? Why do you give? Why do you pray? Why do you come to church? What is the motivation behind your actions?
And part of it was they'd also been chosen by Herod's guys, and they were connected with the Romans in many ways.
Yeah, some groups
So
of
they
them were.
wanted to keep their control, their power, and here's the important thing, the greedy money.
Yeah. Here, what I saw this today and it hit me again. He calls them serpents.
Right.
What do we know about serpents in the scriptures?
They're the devil or evil.
I mean, they're bad. Have we ever seen a serpent in scripture? I can't think of one that's good.
That's good. No.
With Eve.
Do what?
With Eve in the Garden of...
Yeah. I
But
can't
not a
think
good
of
one.
a single
No.
time that serpent is used in a way that doesn't signal like someone opposing God. Jesus is telling you, brood of vipers.
That's the worst kind of snake, is a viper snake.
You are poisoning the people of God, not actually bringing them to faithfulness, which is what the Pharisees would have thought they were doing. So I'm going to keep going down. This leads Jesus to just essentially a lament over, again, crying out over Jerusalem. How often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings? We're going to take our first side trip. This is to Isaiah 31. And look at this passage of Isaiah. It says, like birds hovering, so the Lord of hosts will protect Jerusalem. Just think of the Lord's wings covering over the city. He will protect and deliver it. He will spare and rescue it. Okay, this is the first key to understanding this passage. What do the wings symbolize? The bird covering over Jerusalem.
That's
God's
rescue, protection, and deliverance. Remember those three words.
Like a hen.
Yeah. Jesus is saying how often I would have. So if he would have, that's implying that's what's not happening.
They're not protecting them.
So if Jerusalem is now somehow missing out on God's protection and deliverance and rescue, what can we expect to happen next?
They're going to be destroyed or annihilated or something bad.
And what do we see Jesus immediately go with his disciples to start talking about?
And the destruction of the temple.
Do you see? Like this is Jesus saying the people have not, and by people, really, he's talking about the leaders of Israel. They have not done what God asked them to do. They're corrupt. They're not actually teaching the people justice and faithfulness as God asked them to. And so Jesus is saying there is coming a destruction. God's protection and rescue right now is not on the city in the way that they would think. What does everyone expect Jesus to do as Messiah?
To come in and be a king and conquer and
conquer the Romans.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen instead to Jerusalem? What do we know?
The temple is destroyed.
The temple is going to be destroyed. So Jesus is saying rescue is coming. It doesn't negate what he does on the cross, but the rescue is not going to be for the city of Jerusalem.
No.
It's going to be for the whole world in a very different way. So, okay, hold
Okay.
on to that as we keep going through.
Alex,
Now,
I want to
yeah,
mention something. At the end, I hate to be a spoiler on this, but at the episode one of The Chosen on season 5, there's a great pass. At the end. There's a great passage over Jesus speaks those same words. I'm sure you've seen that episode and stuff like
yeah,
that, and it's really caught. I thought it was caught magnificently.
yeah, and that's not a spoiler. I'm going to show you the destruction of Jerusalem here in just a second. But yeah, absolutely. The Chosen is the answer to all of it. You just have to watch it. If you
There you
haven't
go.
watched it, I don't know what you're doing. Just do it. Do it this season for the rest of Lent.
Good.
Okay, so Jesus now, at this point, he's done with his public addresses. He'll kind of address the crowd, but not really during his crucifixion or even before during the trial. But like his teaching and preaching days in the midst of the crowds, they're done. From this point forward, in this next series of parables and speeches, who is Jesus directly talking to?
The disciples.
The disciples.
Preparing them.
So they're leaving the temple area, and his disciples are like, oh, look at these buildings. Now, other gospels are going to tell us they're what? They're amazed by, I mean, they're just oohing and awing over these buildings. This is a rendering I got from Marty that shows what this would have looked like in Jesus's day. And this was a marvel of engineering. We've been talking about this in the emails on Sundays. Just, it's hard for us to picture like a building today that would equate to how they felt about the temple. Maybe, have y'all heard about that like single line deal that was going to be built in the desert in Dubai? Like that was going to be it's canceled, by the way. They couldn't even do it. It was going to be a marvel of engineering. Think of like the most impressive building you've ever seen and multiply that by unbelievable numbers. This is how big this structure was. It was marvelous, marvelous. And Jesus says, okay, you see all these things? Uh-huh. Listen to this truly. Amen. I say to you, this is really important. There will not be one left here, one stone upon another that's not going to be thrown down. So Jesus is pointing forward to what we just talked about, that he's starting to hint at. Jerusalem cannot last the way it's going. The temple system is too corrupt. Something is going to come and it's going to all come crashing down. And again, spoiler alert, this actually happens. Titus is going to come in 70 AD after several years of a revolution and war and a rebellion in Jerusalem. And he is going to cart off and destroy the temple. He's going to bring people into slavery, kills like, I think some estimates were tens of thousands or even 100,000 people. This is the menorah being carted off. Does anyone know, fun fact, does anyone know where this image comes from? Some of you might have seen it in person. This is on the famous Ark of Titus in Rome. You can go see this today. This scene playing out of the destruction of the temple and even the carting off of the gold and menorah and all the people of Jerusalem. This is a more medieval style rendering of what that must have looked like. You can see the fires that were set, people being thrown off the wall. I mean, this was a terrible, terrible day. If you go to Jerusalem today, you can see very clear evidence of that destruction. All of these stones were stones that were thrown down. And there are places, if you've been to Israel, do you know what all this black stuff is? It's not just dirt. What is it?
Smoke.
Fire from the fire.
It's the burn marks left
From the
over
fire.
from the fires.
Yeah.
So you can go and see the evidence of this destruction still today. I want you to have this picture in your mind because what Jesus is mostly talking about in the rest of the passage we're going to look at is this coming destruction of Jerusalem. He knows it's coming. Now, whether you believe that he knows it's coming because he's divine and he knows all things, or you believe that when he set aside his divinity, he set aside his ability to know the future like that. However you parse this out, um, you can say Jesus knows this is coming because he sees the greed and the corruption, and systems like that just can't last. So either way, Jesus knows that this isn't going to last, and he knows that Rome is going to eventually raise it to the ground. And, like if you think about this picture again, can you imagine being told that this was going to happen? I mean, that this building would be torn down. Look at the size of it. The disciples are clearly rattled. They're on the Mount of Olives, which again overlooks the temple. So they're sitting with Jesus and they have this scene in their mind. In fact, I think you can probably see the Mount of Olives would have been somewhere right around here. So they're sitting on this hill overlooking the temple. And what do they want to know? Can you like elaborate a little bit more on this, Jesus? That sounds really intense. How do we know when this is going to happen? When they say when this will be, what are they referring to?
The end time.
The destruction of the temple, which is what Jesus has just told them is going to happen. And then they say, which many people believe is a second question, what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? Okay, this is where we have to do a lot of work to understand how Jesus is going to answer this question. Many people see two questions here. When is the temple going to be destroyed? And when are you going to come into your power, Jesus? Now, in the Jewish worldview, there was two different types of eschatology. Eschatology just means study of the end times, so to speak, or the when is, God going to come and set everything right. Think of that as the end of the age, eschatology. And there was a two-part Jewish eschatology. Again, stole this straight from Marty. This right here is the blog I got it from, which has some more helpful details. So I'm going to put this in the chat first and foremost. And if any of this is interesting to you, here is a better podcast where he's going to explain why none of what we're talking about today has anything to do with the end times. So if this is interesting to you, go listen to that podcast. Doesn't mean you have to believe all of it. I don't know that I believe all. It's really helpful to set the scene. So in the Jewish two-part eschatology, there was this age we live in, and the Messiah was going to come, and the moment the Messiah came, he's going to usher in this age to come. So there would be a very clear demarcation line between this age that we're living in, where things are not always great, and Rome is our oppressors and things are bad. But there's going to come a day when the Messiah is here and that age is gone, and then we are all in the age to come. And the age to come is when God has raised Israel back up to power and everything is good again. Make sense? Okay. This is actually probably way closer to what Jesus teaches on when he talks about eschatology. There's this age and still the age to come. Those are the same. But do you see how there's a little bit of overlap in these two? What Jesus showed us, what I think this is actually way more accurate to the real life, is that we live in this age. The Messiah has come, ushered in the kingdom, but this age is still here. We live in the overlap. We like to call this the now and not yet. There is an area or an aspect of the kingdom that is here now, available to us. Heaven has met earth in Jesus. We believe that heaven has met earth through us, that we are places where heaven and earth meet. But yet, when you look around the world, are there still bad things that happen?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Has everything been made right?
No.
No, it hasn't. So the Messiah has come and ushered in God's kingdom and rescued his people. And yet there is also a sense where there is going to be a second coming that fully deals with evil once and for all. Does this make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. This is what I want you to think about when we think about this next scriptural passage. So these are the questions that the disciples want to know. They're probably thinking of Jesus's coming in line with this. They want to know, when are you going to overthrow Rome? Are you going to destroy the temple? And is that going to be when you show your power? N.T. Wright talks about this idea of like the coming as a royal state visit, or even when a divine figure would show their power and majesty with great dramatic feats. So the disciples are trying to figure out how all of this relates to their idea of eschatology. But I'm going to put this one in front of us again, because I think this is probably way more what Jesus is talking about. So Jesus answers them, "See that no one leads you astray. For many will come in my name saying, I am the Christ, and they'll lead many astray. There's going to be people who claim that they're the Messiah. Don't believe them. You're going to hear wars and rumors of wars. Don't be afraid." Which, by the way, the Bible says all the time, God tells people in wartime not to be afraid. God is with you. Don't be afraid. All of these things are going to happen. This is just part of this world we live in. Even though I'm here and the kingdom has come, there is still just, we live in this yuck world where this stuff is just going to happen. Nation rises against nation, kingdom against kingdom, famines. This is the broken world that we live in. These are the birth pains. The birth pains. When do we see birth pains? In pregnant women who are about to give birth. These are the birth pains. The age has come and yet is still going to come. You're going to face a lot of persecution. People are going to fall away but you stay faithful. Don't fall away. The gospel of the kingdom is going to be proclaimed throughout the whole world. So you see already, Jesus is both giving them a cold dose of reality about what their life is going to be like, what the world is going to be like. And I think possibly he's getting them to see it's not going to be this light switch moment. Actually, it's going to be a little more complicated than that. It's going to take a little time for the kingdom to totally just take over the world. So you're going to deal with the now and not yet of living in this world. You are part of the kingdom. That comes with so many good things. You're still going to be dealing with the world that we live in and all the brokenness. Don't be afraid. Stay faithful. You're going to face persecution, but know that at the same time, the gospel is going to spread throughout the whole known world. And then there is going to come this moment called the abomination of desolation, spoken of by the prophet Daniel. If you want to know more about that, go read Daniel 7. It talks about this moment when the temple is going to be desolated. God's people are going to be carted off. All of that. We're going to skip down to verse 21. There's going to be this great tribulation, such as not been from the beginning of the world until now, and no, never will be. Now that sounds pretty like definitive. This is the worst thing that's going to happen. The temple being destroyed is like the worst thing that's ever going to happen. Well, what's interesting is if you go back and look in the Hebrew Bible, they use this kind of language all the time. This is like a hyperbolic way of saying, this was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Do we use that language of multiple events in our life sometimes? Yeah. This is Jesus using that same kind of hyperbolic language of, this is going to be like one of the bad ones. It's going to be awful. You know, like when Babylon came in and destroyed everything, it's going to be like that. If those days had not been cut short, no human being would. I mean, this is going to be awful. And what do you do when you see this happening? What does he tell them? Don't believe that there's going to be all these false messiahs. Is this where he says, he basically tells them to run? The vultures are going to gather. I love what N.T. Wright says. In the ancient world, there's not really a difference between vulture and eagles. And who has the sign of the eagle as like their standard? Rome.
Rome.
Who's going to come? Who are the vultures here?
Rome.
The corpse they're the vultures. Rome is coming to destroy. Many scholars believe that this abomination of desolation was Titus's destruction of Jerusalem. This is what they would point to. Jesus is saying, this is happening. This destruction is coming. So don't be surprised when you see it. Marty summarizes this section of Jesus with these six phrases or ideas. You're going to hear rumors of the end and false messiahs. Don't believe them. The world is going to get crazy, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. This is just part of the world we live in. All of this is going to have to happen. You're going to have to persevere. And then the next three are what we're going to see come next with the parables and all these stories. You're going to have to be ready by taking care of God's people the way the priests aren't doing it. You're going to have to do what they're not doing. Persevere and be ready by taking care of the oppressed. This is the summary of these two chapters, essentially, 23 and 24. And then in the center of this kind of dialogue, Jesus gives us this mashup of Old Testament. I mean, this, you could spend a whole week unpacking the links back to the Hebrew Bible here. And I'm only going to give you a couple because, again, it would just take way too long. This is Daniel 7, the abomination or whatever. And no, this is Daniel 7. That's Daniel 9. Daniel 7 is the image of the Son of Man coming before the Ancient of Days, receiving his everlasting kingdom. When Jesus calls himself the Son of Man, which he does right here, the sign of the Son of Man, that's what he's talking about. Jesus is going to come into his everlasting kingdom. Let's look and see what other links do I have here for. Okay, this is Isaiah 13. For the stars of the heavens and their constellations will not give their light. We're talking about on the day of the Lord. The sun will be dark at its rising, the moon will not shed its light. Okay, let's read some. The sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven. And does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Okay. Jesus is drawing right here on this image of the day of the Lord. What is it going to be like in the day of the Lord? And this is where I'm going to pop this video from the Bible Project here now into the chat. I told you I would give you some resources tonight. This is the one I think that most helped me today to understand maybe what Jesus is getting at here. What celebration is happening around this time that Jesus is in Jerusalem? What celebration is going on in the background?
Passover.
Passover. What is Passover commemorating ultimately?
Their Exodus
from Egypt.
celebration.
And
Egypt.
they're by reminding themselves of the Exodus story where God rescued his people in a mighty way and overthrew their oppressors. What were the Israelites pointing forward to? Like, what did they hope would happen?
Deliverance.
That God would come and do it again, right?
Yes,
Okay.
they were expecting it.
They were expecting God to come. And what did they imagine that day would look like?
A king riding in and triumph, like Maccabees, or no, Maccabean.
Yeah, Maccabees.
Maccabeans.
So they're expecting that the day of the Lord is going to come, and who's going to be overthrown?
The Roman.
The Romans. Now, clearly, that is not what happens here in history, at least in this moment in history. But I want you to think about this for a second. And this video that I put in the chat will help you with this. Jesus understands that there is actually a bigger problem. On the one hand, who else has become, we just read a whole chapter about it, sort of like an oppressor of Israel?
Religious leaders.
The religious leaders.
The Pharisees, the scribes, the Sadducees, all their
On
disciples.
the one hand, you have the Roman oppressors, and they'll be dealt with eventually. And on the other hand, Israel too is kind of operating as an oppressor. At least the religious elite, they're leading the people astray. And in Jesus's worldview from the Hebrew Bible, what happens to oppressors? There's multiple days of the, there's There's the day of the Lord from the Exodus story. There's the day of the Lord in the Babylon story. And what else? What does this
Noah,
point to? Yes,
Talk
Rome is going to
about woes,
eventually,
don't they?
that's right. Eventually, Rome is going to be dealt with. The Roman Empire will collapse. All of that is true. But is it possible that what Jesus sees is the day of the Lord is also happening in the destruction of Jerusalem? Just like
okay,
it did with the Israelites when they were carted off into Babylon, which was due to their failure to obey God and all. Does this, you see the connection here?
Yes. Punishment.
It's a little bit of judgment. We know that the temple is being judged. That's what happened when Jesus went in and flipped tables. So is it possible that Jesus has in mind here multiple days of the Lord? That there's a day of the Lord that is the coming of the Roman judgment. There is the coming day of the Lord that is a judgment on Jerusalem that he's alluded to here with the destruction of Jerusalem. And then think about this too. Is any of that the ultimate problem with the world? What is the ultimate problem with the world that has to be
Sin.
dealt with before this age to come is fully inaugurated?
Sin.
greed and sin and
Sin and darkness, evil at its core.
yes,
Jesus knows what's coming in just like a few days. He is going to go to the cross. And what does he do on the cross?
Ah,
Deal with ultimate sin. He is going to bring in the kingdom in a way that deals with sin and the ultimate oppressor. He is going to overthrow that ultimate oppressor. Now, that doesn't mean that everything is made right and everything, but it opens the door for everything to be made right.
is that called taking the cup?
Yes, that's the image of Jesus drinking the cup. We will get to that
Okay,
when
I'm
we
sorry.
get to Gethsemane, because that's what Jesus says, take this cup away from me. But what I want you to see here is it's possible that when Jesus talks about this coming of the Son of Man, that he actually has multiple layers of meaning, all being woven in together. He's clearly bringing in this idea of the day of the Lord. I think he's bringing it for the destruction of Jerusalem and pointing forward to um, Jesus's inauguration as king, because that's what the Son of Man in Daniel 7 passage talks about, his everlasting kingdom. And when will that happen? We learned this back in Mark. What is the moment that Jesus is crowned as king? Mark spent a whole chapter talking about how this event lines up perfectly with like the Roman coronation of a Caesar. Does anyone remember?
The crown of thorns? I don't know.
no.
That's part of it is the crown of thorns. It's when he dies. Mark goes through great pains to paint the moment of Jesus' death as his inauguration as king. And so if we see here Jesus taking up his kingdom through his death and then resurrection, what I want you to see is it possible that Jesus is layering on these images? That there is definitely going to be the destruction of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple. That system has to go down. It's an oppressive system. Rome is going to eventually meet its end. But also at the same time, Jesus is talking and pointing forward to the ultimate end of evil, starting with his death on the cross and inauguration as king. And again, it means we put in this now and not yet. It's not, there's going to come another day of the Lord. We talked about that in Revelation, but I think Jesus is weaving all of this together. And so when he says, they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. I don't want you to picture Jesus literally coming from the clouds, shining like radiant, whatever. What is he pointing back to? Where to go? Daniel 7. To him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom. Behold, with the clouds of heaven, he's coming down. All people are going to serve him. Can you see a world where this has already happened? He's been given his everlasting kingdom. There is a now and not yet. Jesus is going to gather the elect from the four winds. Has that started happening yet? Yes. In fact, this is the book of Acts where the gospel is being taken out into the four corners of the known world. What I think Jesus is doing is saying, you guys, yeah, all of these oppressive systems are going to come down, but just wait. In a couple of days, you're going to see the true coming of the Son of Man in a way that you don't even know. And it's going to bring you into this age to come. And you're still going to have to deal with suffering and persecution, but oh my goodness, you're going to be in the kingdom. And I'm going to be ruling. And you're going to do incredible things. So here's what I need you to know. And it's in that context that we get all of these other pieces that we're going to keep moving through. Again, here's a little clue to this. He says, this generation, and a generation is about how many years?
20,
1,000 years?
Not 1,000.
20,
20 or
40.
30?
20.
40.
Yeah.
Think
40.
about the generation in the wilderness that didn't get to come into the promised land.
Yeah.
How long were they in the wilderness?
40 years.
40 years. By the way, when did the destruction of the temple happen?
70 years.
70,
70?
70 AD.
When do we kind of place Jesus's crucifixion? I mean, it's not an
30.
exact science.
30, he was 30,
33,
Yeah.
80.
33. Is he pretty close?
40 years.
You
yeah.
could say he did a pretty good average, 40 years. This generation will not pass until all these things take place. When he says all these things, I think he is talking about the destruction of Jerusalem and his inauguration as king. The coming everlasting kingdom has come into the world now. Do you see? That's why he can say it's happening, it's taking place in your generation. You're going to see it. But that doesn't mean that everything has been made right. So we look at this and we want it to be this moment when it's the end of everything, end of our age. But Jesus says it doesn't work that way. It's not neat and tidy like this. It's a little more like this. All of these things are going to take place. I'm going to be ruling as king in this everlasting kingdom you get to be a part of and take to the corners of the world. And you're going to see the destruction of this wicked system that has been put in place. This is also why Jesus can say, concerning that day and hour, ultimately, at the same time that we know what's coming with Jesus taking up his kingdom, the second coming, no one knows. He's saying, you want this, no one knows when that's going to happen. I can tell you when this is going to happen. No one knows when this is going to happen. For as there were in the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Now, again, Jesus is layering on meanings here. Elizabeth did an unbelievable job in the email connecting these dots. If you haven't read what she wrote, is that today's reading? Wednesday or is it Tuesdays?
Let me see.
Wednesday, I can't remember. If you have not read that yet, oh man, it's so good.
When?
It's
Tuesday.
tomorrow's.
It's tomorrow.
Tuesday.
Fantastic.
The
Here's a
destruction
little,
of the temple.
she is brilliant for putting this together. What was the flood a reaction to? Does anyone remember?
Yeah, it was the
Evil.
evil that was
Evil and Nineveh.
It was like a cleansing flood.
Yes.
There was a remnant that got saved on the boat with Noah, but
Right.
it was a washing away of this wicked, spiraling down generation. So in the Bible, in the Old Testament, floods became synonymous with this wicked, like removal of
Like purging them.
yeah, absolutely. I think, oh, see, I made the screen smaller and I lost this one. There's all these passages. Here we go. Look at this is Isaiah 8. This will explain what I'm getting at here. Therefore, behold, the Lord is bringing up against them the waters of the river, mighty and many, many rivers. Okay, that's interesting. The king of Assyria in all his glory. What's the river? It's the
The
king
Jordan?
of Assyria.
Oh,
Euphrates?
Do you,
Euphrates,
no,
Tigris, and
no, you're
Euphrates.
thinking too literal here. Jesus is using this image of a mighty flood, a cleansing flood. And what he's really talking about is an army that's coming.
Syrian army.
So
Oh.
instead of now the flood waters bringing cleansing, God is going to use a kind of flood in the
Oh,
form of an
army.
army who's going to come in
Hundreds
and
of thousands
offer
of
the
them.
judgment. So in the Hebrew Bible, this idea of flood is used as a metaphor for talking about God's judgment. Has that been what we've been talking about this whole time?
Yes.
Yeah. So he's now going back to this image of the flood and how some people are going to be swept away. Now, we read this passage about the woman in the field, one goes and one stays. And what does our culture like to think of that as?
Rapture.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just use our logical brain for a second. In the flood, we just looked at two examples, Noah and Assyria, right? Taking the Israelites away. Is being taken away by the flood a good thing or a bad thing?
Bad thing,
Good
I
thing.
think.
It's a bad thing.
Yeah, because you're dead.
And this is hard. I'm going to be honest. This is hard for me to talk about with everything that happened last summer. And I need you to like totally separate that, okay? Because this is not that. Does this make sense? Some of y'all know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes.
We are not talking about
Yeah,
that
yeah,
in
no.
any shape, form, or fashion. In the Hebrew imagination, is being left by the flood water good or bad?
Yeah.
It's good.
Bad.
Being
Bad,
swept
okay.
away, it is a judgment. So when you
Flood is
think
judgment.
about being taken up as the rapture, you've completely swapped what this passage means. Do you see?
Yes.
The rapture views the one being taken away as I'm going to save you before all the bad stuff happens. But in the biblical imagery, being taken away by the flood is a sign of judgment. So this can't be talking about a rapture. Do you see? That is bad theology that you can just leave behind. So again, Jesus is saying there is coming a judgment, a flood of sorts. This time it's going to be through the Romans, and you need to be ready because you don't know when it's going to happen. And so here's the whole point of these next two parables. What does it mean to be ready? It's be faithful and wise. Who then is going to be found as the faithful and wise one who's left? The parable of the 10 virgins talks about which of those two? Which word? Look, I've even highlighted it for you because I want to make it so easy for you. Which word is repeated over and over again in this parable?
Wise.
Okay, so whatever this parable is about, it's about wisdom. Okay, just skip down with me for just a second. Do you see which word in the parable of the talents is repeated over and over and over again?
Faithful. Yeah.
Faithful.
Faithful.
What Jesus is doing is giving his disciples a model of what it looks like to be faithful and wise as the judgment floodwaters come. You see how that works? So, okay, let's take one at a time here. And we're going to work through these a little bit quicker because we only have like 5 minutes left. And I'm going to use Marty. This is Marty's other picture that he summarizes these passages. The parable of the foolish bridesmaids, which is the one we're looking at right here on the screen. He says the whole point, be ready. The priests aren't doing it. You're going to have to. All right, let's look at this. In Jewish ancient practice, a groom or guy, I guess you could say before he's the groom, would propose and then disappear. And not in a bad way, not like he ghosted you. He would propose to you. You say, yes, sir, let's go. And then he's going to dip out for an unknown amount of time. And what is he going to do? He's going to go home.
He's
and do
trying
what?
to prepare a place for them to live.
He's
Yeah.
got to build you a piece of, you don't want to live in the same room with your in-laws. So he's going to build you like a house on the side of their house that's all y'all's, which you kind of want him to do that, right? That's good news. You don't want to live, again, with your in-laws. You're going to have a family compound. You can't get away from that, but you're not at least going to be under the exact same roof. Guys, I imagine that you are more aware of that. How long would it take to do that, do you think?
A long time,
Are,
months.
are you going to get
Yeah.
that done in like a day?
No matter
No,
how fast we get it, no matter how fast we get it done, it wouldn't be fast enough.
Yeah, because guess who's waiting for you to come back and get them?
The bride.
And she's preparing
Right.
herself.
Okay. Girls, put
whole
yourself in the
village.
position of the bride here. Your husband, future husband, has just left. You know that he's going to build you a place. He is taking care of you. You don't know when he's going to come back because you don't have email or a cell phone. You just have to trust that one day, any time, it could be any time of the night, one day he's coming back for you. What are you going to do in the meantime?
You're preparing.
You got to be prepared. Are
Mhm.
you just going to like forget that no, you're going to be, it's all you're going to think about.
You're
And so,
anticipating.
in small towns, it's not just your good news, it's like the whole town's good news. They know when the groom comes back, there's going to be a massive party and everyone in the town is going to get to celebrate. And so at night, you would have watchmen watching the roads and waiting for the groom to come. And as soon as you see the groom coming down the streets to reclaim his bride, you're going to make a noise and everyone's going to come out to meet him. Does this make sense? This is not
Yeah.
how we do it for good reason. But this is what it looks like in Jesus's day. So look at this story. You have 5 foolish and 5 wise women. The foolish ones do not prepare. They don't have the oil that they need. The 5 wise ones, they have oil. They're ready. They've been preparing. And what happens is the bridegroom is, seen coming down, but is then delayed. And when everyone comes out to meet him in the dead of the night, what happens to the foolish girls?
They say we have not enough oil.
And if they don't have the light to guide them, how can they find the groom?
Right.
They can't. There's so much time we could spend on the implications of this. I don't want to belabor it, but I just want you to consider, what does it mean to have the light so that you can find the groom? And by the way, Jesus is the one who says that he is the groom over and over and over again, all throughout the New Testament. So what does it mean to be wise and prepared so that when the groom comes, you have the light you need, you're ready to go and meet him?
You know what this brings to mind is knowing, because they get into so much about talking about false teachers and knowing the word so that you're not led astray. You're in the light, you're saved, but you need to prepare, you need to keep, because they're going to be more false. They're already coming,
I think you're so onto it because there's a psalm that says your word is the what?
Light into
The
my
light and the lamp.
Lamp unto my
Lamp to my
feet.
feet. That's
Mhm.
probably absolutely a hyperlink back to that.
Psalm
So-
119.
Psalm 1, there you go.
19.
Absolutely, Carol. I think you're spot on. What does it look like to carry the light and and there's something to this about even recognizing, what does he call the Pharisees? Hypocrites and
Blindfold guides.
blind guides, blind fools. They can't see. They don't have the light. So it's just worth spending some time thinking about this. Let's go on to the parable of the talents because I don't want to keep you too late. Marty's going to say this whole thing, you have to give an account of what you've done with what you've been given. Persevere and be ready by taking care of the oppressed. Okay, so we have a master. He's going on a journey and he gives 3 people 3 different measures of stuff. To one, he gives 5 talents. Now, we've done some numerology here in Matthew's study before. What does the number 5 represent?
The books of the Torah.
Torah.
Marty makes the case that you could see some symbolism of numbers here. To some, he is given the law to follow. He's given them this guide. What do they do with it? Okay, hold that. Now, to another, he gives what? 2. What do 2 symbolize?
The two tablets of the
The two
Ten
tablets.
Commandments.
So some have all the law. They're holding on to the entire books of Moses, the whole Torah. Some, they just have the two tablets. They're holding on to the most basic commandments. And to another, just one. What does
He
one
buries it.
represent?
He buries it.
Well, hold on. Before we get there, Mary,
God.
what does one represent? Say it again, Candace.
God.
God,
To some
Or him-
people, all
to some
they
people, or
have
himself,
is
or
God.
herself.
It's God.
Is God.
Some were given the full law, some are given the two commandments, and some all they have. Who could we say all they have is God? They don't have the law or the commandments.
The least and the poorest and those who have no
The
knowledge.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, now the one who received the 5 talents has made 5 talents more. The one with 2 talents more, but the one who just had the one dug it in the ground. The effect here is, what have you done with what you've been given?
Good.
To the one who has done a lot, the one who's been faithful, more is going to be given to them. To the one who hasn't been faithful, it's going to be taken away and given to others. If you're the Pharisees, what does this tell you?
You were given everything and you've kind of not done it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have messed up.
All of us have gifts, skills, talent. All of us have something that we've been given. God doesn't just give that to you for yourself. You are blessed to be a blessing. So he's telling you, don't just hide away and bury your talent, bury your treasure. Do something with it. God has given it to you on purpose for a purpose. So how are you going to invest it? In other words, what does it look like for you to be faithful? No matter what you've been given, you're going to see people who you feel like have more than you or less than you. Don't worry about that. All you have to worry about is, what does it look like to be faithful? And here's where I want to end it here. Twice we're told about this place of weeping and gnashing of teeth in outer darkness. And if you think that God is just this angry God who's going to take all the bad people and throw them out into the, whatever, the place of weeping and gnashing of teeth was a place outside of Jerusalem. Let's see, actually, I don't think this picture is going to show it, but imagine right down here. Can y'all see kind of like this side down here? It's the Valley of Hinnom. And Gehenna was this place of weeping and gnashing of teeth because it came to be representative of Israel's rebellion, where they worshiped other gods, even to the point of child sacrifice. Weeping and gnashing of teeth. I mean, just those two images cannot be separated. A place where there's child sacrifice is a place of weeping and gnashing of. It's a dark place. There's a lot of symbolism in that. Jesus says, people are going to be cast out into that place. But here in just a little while, in the last chapters of Matthew's gospel, who else is going to be carted outside of the city? Where else is there going to be a moment of total darkness and weeping of gnashing of teeth? So Jesus, this is what Good Friday is all about. And what I take from this, what I hope that you remember, is Jesus goes out into these dark, desolate places so that we can come from those places back into the light. So this is not about a vengeful God who wants to get rid of all his enemies. What Jesus is ultimately pointing here is, if it weren't for him, there'd be no hope. Jesus is doing something that will, just totally revolutionize and bring in the age to come and allow God's people a way back into the light. Can you imagine a world where Jesus doesn't come and the temple, and it's, being ruled over by these Pharisees and Sadducees and chief priests is all there is? Jesus says, I have come so that all those who are in this place, I'm going to go there with them so that I can bring them back. And I just think that that's a really important place for us to remember, that these people are being thrown out here, but it's not going to be long before Jesus is thrown out here so that he can bring them back into the fold. And I don't know about you, but I think there's a lot of cups of coffee. Again, this is an area, I don't know that I would say this for sure, but I think about the one talent who all they had is God. I think of the Gentiles. They didn't know about the law or whatever. They would be thrown out here, but then Jesus is going to usher them back in. There's just, to me, it feels like there's just something to that. This is where we end. We pick up next week with this final judgment, the final piece of this speech of Jesus, and then we are into the last days, the plot to kill Jesus, his arrest, and his crucifixion. So I'm going to stop here. Questions, thoughts, comments on anything we've talked about. I hope that this is helpful to
Yes.
some extent.
Alex, this is Mary.
Hey, Mary.
When Jesus was talking about the end times, I was wondering how it compared with Revelation.
Yeah, I think what Revelation, at least what it feels like Revelation deals with, is another example of the now and not yet. What we remember from Revelation is there is a sense in which Jesus is saying, or, Jesus is giving the vision of, hold on, persecution is still, we still live in this, but there's coming a day when this is going to happen. It's not all that different from where they are right now, because it was written for people who lived right after Jesus had died and been resurrected, and now they were still living under Roman rule. So I think that Revelation is a book for the people living in this time frame. And therefore it speaks to us too, because we still live in this time frame. Everything that Jesus says about rumors of wars, and there is a reason why people who try to predict the end of the world predict it in every generation, because every generation has the same signs: wars, rumors of wars, people claiming to have all the right answers. And Jesus says, you don't know the day. You don't know the time. Stop trying to guess it. You don't know. Even I don't know, he says. We live in the now and not yet. So what he tells them is how to live here, not when this is going to happen. And Revelation, I think, does the exact same.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question.
You did a great job on it.
Other thoughts? How is this hitting you? What stands out to you?
Well, the Methodist Church to me stands out in that I'm in a Bible study at Brookhaven, and it's very eclectic, a lot of Baptists.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about tribulation and rapture, a lot more among that crowd than there is in our crowd. Why is that?
Oh, I could give you lots of snarky answers, but I won't, because I love our Baptist friends too.
Okay.
Stan, it comes from, even in seminary, you're taught 6 different ways to think about the tribulation and the millennium and all that. And what I like to do is set all of that aside and just look at what the Bible has to say for itself.
Okay.
And I think when we do that, just like we did tonight, we can kind of start to see, where are we taking ideas outside the Bible and forcing them in? And what is the Bible actually saying? And I mean, the rapture is one of those things. I do not believe in a rapture, because when I see these passages in their context, it just stops making sense. But I respect that there are other people who are smarter than me who see differently. And this is part of the beauty of the church, is that everybody gets to kind of come along with their different views, and we can talk about it. And they may change my mind on some things, and maybe I'll change theirs. And that's great.
I also think, if I may, I don't think they rely on the Old Testament as much. Like, I so appreciate how we go back to Daniel. We go back
We
to
see the
Isaiah.
connections.
And
Yeah.
my sister, who is a devout Baptist, they said, oh, we don't need the Old Testament. We only pay attention to what Jesus says. So if you do that, you lose that picture, that connection. And I think that's what Stan is talking about.
Yeah.
I think you need to ask them if they go back and actually understand what Jesus was talking about and where he was coming from. That's what I appreciate so much about this.
Yeah, I'll tell you, if you ever hear a teacher say we don't need the Old Testament, you just stop listening to anything else they say. That's my one piece of advice for you. What else? Any other thoughts, questions, comments? Okay, clear as mud, I hope. I mean, again, this is where I think we've come a long way in getting to a better idea of what Jesus could be talking about. Are there still some mysteries? You bet. I skipped some things. But the Bible is a meditative thing meant to be understood over a lifetime. So if you don't have all the answers, that just means you still have time left to figure it out. Would anyone be willing to close us out in prayer tonight?
I will.
Oh, Candace, great. Thank you.
Okay, but I've gotten this, and you might have actually been the source.
Okay.
Because you're supposed to never go through the Holy Week without going through this.
Okay.
Dear season of Lent, as we approach Holy Week, thank you, God, for carrying the cross. Thank you, Lord, for carrying the cross I could never carry. By your wounds, I am healed. By your sacrifice, I am redeemed. By your love, I'm forgiven. By your grace, I'm saved. By your guidance, I am found. In your mercy, I find strength. In your light, I find clarity. In your word, I find the way. We love you, Jesus. All the glory be to you, our Savior, our King, and our eternal love as the greatest commandment. We ask all this in your holy name. Keep us all safe. Keep our country safe and all that's going on in the world, Lord, and bring peace and leadership that is inspired by you. We ask all this in your holy name and a life of following you. Amen.
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 Thank you.
All right. Next week is at least somewhat easier, even if the content is harder. So here we go. We're in the end game now. We'll see.
Thank you,
Happy
Alex.
reading sounds wrong. Meaningful reading through the next few weeks of Matthew. I'll see you next week.
Thank you,
Alex.
for everything.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.